Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly, the O'Reilly final. Manchester City win the Carabao Cup. 2 goals for Nico as Pep danced with anyone and everyone. He played a reserve keeper who was good. Arteta played a reserve keeper who wasn't. But Arsenal didn't really turn up. What does that mean for the rest of the season? Could they come second in everything? Arsenal fans are still on track to celebrate a Spurs relegation. The fans took to the streets in their thousands to try and motivate Igor Tudor's men. This would be the turning point. Narrator, it wasn't the turning point. A massive win for Forest. Fortunately for Spurs, West Ham got battered by Villa and Leeds drew a blank at home to Brentford. In the race for top 5, should we include the Bees? And should we include Everton, who dispatched Chelsea 3-0? Arne Slot under more pressure after defeat at Brighton, and Manchester United's progress is sort of halted at Bournemouth. Where will Sunderland put Brian Brobby's statue? A last-minute winner at Newcastle, helping the Black Cats do the double over their neighbours. We'll do all that, answer your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Seb Hutchinson, welcome.
Hello.
Hello, Dan Bardell.
Hello, Max Rushden.
And good morning, John Brewin.
Good morning.
Very sad, John, with that. Is everything okay?
Everything's fine. Everything's just fine.
Great. Good. Let's start at Wembley. Manchester City 2, Arsenal 0. 2 goals for Nico O'Reilly. Pep's 5th League Cup. His first win against Arteta and Arsenal since April 2023. Arsenal have lost more League Cup finals than any other club in the competition's history. 7. Simon says, did Pep think it the right amount? And that's a good question, John, isn't it? I mean, City was so dominant in this game. You feel like Pep was just all power, all conquering Pep that we sort of haven't seen for a little while.
Yes, the tactical master puts on a tactical masterclass. And he was ready for Arsenal, wasn't he? I mean, Arsenal, the first half, you would say, probably were the better team without really doing that much of it. But Arsenal trying to pass the ball around the back, dallying on the ball, Kepa, who I'm sure we'll get to later, having the ball, that's not really hurting anyone, is it? And City just pressed, kept Arsenal where they wanted to be. And in matches like that between top teams, it comes down to a mistake. City seized on that mistake, then built on that mistake. Nico O'Reilly, where did they find this guy? He's been brilliant, hasn't he, all season? And then, at such a young age, he's a Stan Matthews writing his name into a final. Absolutely brilliant from him. City were truly worthy winners. It's funny, isn't it? They're so used to going to Wembley. Maybe that formed part of it. Arsenal got very, very excited about this occasion. I saw footage of the Box Park. I heard several versions of my favourite song, North London Forever, and it just didn't happen for them. It fell very, very flat. But I think the credit has to go to Pep Guardiola, who really, really enjoyed this, didn't he? His post-match celebrations, calling over friends and relations to celebrate with him. At that point, do you think it's a bit like Jurgen Klopp winning the League Cup? Well, we'll have to see. But it was a great occasion for Manchester City. Credit to Pep, credit to City. Oh dear, Arsenal.
Yeah, just on Pep's celebrations, Seb, I don't know how much we should read into them. Like John says, you're meant to enjoy, rather than thinking, what's the impact on the title race? You win a cup, that's great. And I'm too lazy to look back on how Pep has celebrated previous Carabao Cups. But it felt like there was a real significance to this. Like he knows he's going, or he's so pleased they've beaten Arsenal and he thinks that means they can go on and win the treble. I think they could. What? Am I reading too much into this?
I think you are, because
Okay.
Pep Guardiola, we can't take anything from his body language. He's this special individual in the sense that whatever we think we want to almost garner from his body language and how he is with his players and everything else, he'll switch. He'll go completely to the opposite what we think. So we think, oh, Pep's really sad, and he'll reply with, no, not at all. No, I'm really happy. And that is Pep Guardiola. He will be that person. He has everybody on strings. And of course he knows deep inside what he wants to do at the end of the season. But because he's so used to winning, because his career template is, if he doesn't win, then something's not right. And that's also how he's analysed as well. I think in the build-up to this game, it was incredible, the amount of people saying that Pep Guardiola is done, his time at the top is over, has he got the energy for this? And when you break down and look at his team, you can see where the flaws are in his team, but the great strengths of his team are enough to win trophies still. And we saw that in this game. He knew that if he could nullify Arsenal's attacking threat, then City would make opportunities. In the league fixture, of course, he adopted a different approach, and he's trying to switch things up with Arteta each time to keep him guessing. City won't do the same thing when they play at the Etihad. That's for sure in the reverse league game. So it was fascinating to watch, because you saw at the beginning of that second half, you're watching that spell, during the spell when Kepa had the ball and was holding on to it, you could see what was going on quite clearly, and you could also see where Arsenal have struggled in games, even recently against Brentford, in the game against Wolves. They struggled to play the ball out from the back, and he would have identified that. They don't have... Well, they do have, he's only 16, but they don't have a one-on-one player who can really change the game in a moment in the way that I think City do to an extent, to a higher level. And he knows his team is good enough to still overhaul Arsenal at this point. If he had I would say, a more resolute side, a side that's won more things, maybe a Liverpool under Klopp, who were this far ahead, he probably would give it up. I think he still believes he can get to Arsenal at the back end of the season.
I was on Pep Watch like you, Max, and I am reading a lot into those celebrations as well, because I'm with you. He's just
maybe with the two most simple of the four, Dan. I think
that's definitely the case. I'm definitely in the bottom one for the most simple here. He's just gone a season without winning a trophy, so for him that's a lifetime. I know obviously Arsenal have gone a lot longer, but a season without Pep and Manchester City winning a trophy is a long time for him in football. And I just think there's so much other stuff going on between them and Arsenal, that there's so much competition with them, obviously with the Premier League and what's going to happen there. I think this is a massive victory for Manchester City for so many. I sound like Pep then saying so many, for so many reasons. That's a massive psychological boost, and yet I think the trophy is the biggest thing to him, because, as I say, a whole season that can't have happened too often in Pep's career.
Yeah, I think it is interesting, John, that where City, they didn't press high, but they didn't drop off. They were just sort of saying to the defence, "You have the ball." It's interesting. I don't know how many teams I've seen do that against Arsenal, but I don't know if it's a blueprint for everybody, but they seemed so rudderless, Arsenal. They seemed so it was just sort of apathy, this sort of anodyne. It was quite painful to watch, actually, how laborious they were at the back.
It's not the first time this season we've seen Arsenal be, what's the word, constipated in attack, shall we say, to use an interesting metaphor. But it's the secret is out, really, isn't it? That Arsenal don't necessarily flow like other teams do. Their strong points lie in other areas of the game. They actually have the players that could do that, and this has been the thing that Arsenal fans would say, is that they have the ability to play very different types of football. But Pep stymied their ability to be creative. They just couldn't get it going. I often think, is Wembley a factor in that? The occasion, was that a factor in that? They have found it difficult, as Seb said, against teams like Wolves and Brentford. It's like Arsenal, I do think they will win the title, but it's not been easy for them. And so the issue for Pep was or City, is make it more difficult for them, and they managed to do it. Just on Pep, can we mention his style? He went from grunge.
Yeah, please.
We went from grunge in midweek, which didn't really happen for him. The plaid shirt to. I thought that the trousers were sort of like Ian Curtis chic. They sort of, like almost like school trousers. And there was a point where he did that sort of flailing, kicking celebration against the advertising board, which he got booked for, actually, which I thought, betrayed a bit of the old Joy Division, Ian Curtis dancing. I thought it was very impressive. Just, again, as Seb says, Pep is just so fascinating. I mean, you need a Pep cam on certain games, don't you? Just because when he's gone, we will miss this guy, because he has dominated almost to a fault at a certain point, because it's all been about him at certain points. But inside the mind of a genius, a mind that none of us can get into, but you're just watching this guy and thinking, how have you managed that? And I tell you, one person that thinks that today is Mikel Arteta, someone who's been closest to that mind of a genius, probably, in the game. And in the game that was, Jonathan wrote a piece, about master versus apprentice. The master showed it once again that, I'm still the daddy around here.
Yeah, part Ian Curtis, part Timuri Ketsbaia, but the perfect mix, isn't it? We should mention Nico O'Reilly, Seb. John brought it up, and I'd written exactly the same thing. Do Carabao Cups get remembered like FA Cups, like the Matthews final? I can't imagine in 50 years it'll be the O'Reilly final. But what a day for him! What a brilliant season he's had. He has played at left back. He's played at 10, keeping Foden out for City. I don't know how much, but he's such a talent, and just on a pure brilliant footballing level. What a perfect day for this guy.
What stood out to me was his celebrations for the goals and his interview at full time. The level-headedness on somebody who only turned 21 the day before was extraordinary in a way. I don't know what it says about maybe modern football, maybe the mechanical way of thinking, but what he achieved there, even in a League Cup final, is still a huge thing for a player at a club that can bring in almost any player they want at times from across the world. And he's come through playing out of position, essentially, and excelled to the point where he is probably going to start for England, maybe. I know Lewis Hall's in this debate as well. And yet he was so assured in the interview, it's put to him, what an amazing achievement, what an incredible final, you scored both goals, and he's very much just, yes, it's a great day, and this is a special occasion, but he's not going overboard. And it's interesting because that, I guess, is the temperament required to be at the top level of football. You're not allowed to, you can't get ahead of yourself because people will rip you down, and you have to have that self-confidence without seeming like you are overawed by this situation. And he got the balance totally right. And what I also liked about his performance was he knew, and obviously Manchester City knew, there was that period where they had Arsenal contained, Arsenal could not get out, and he could get into the positions where he's got into on more than one occasion this season and scored goals and be impactful in the box in a way that maybe Arsenal would be hoping that Calafiori could have been in that final. But it just shows the whole game state and how he was able to take advantage of it, and it's fantastic. And, as a massive England fan as well, these things excite you. So it's just great to see.
He will miss the penalty. Oh God! I like it when someone said, "Oh, look, he's so young, he's got no fear." And I just think, if I was 21, I'd be shitting bricks.
Yeah. Can we nip that in the bud? Can we nip that in the bud though? That no fear thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't remember ever having no fear ever in my life. When I was 8 years old, I was scared of the dark. And
you're not scared now, Seb. You're not like right now.
Well, the things that worry me now is my internet connection stable enough? These are the sort of things that are important.
It's wonderful. Worth mentioning City were without Mark Gay as well has been so good for them. So Kusanov and Ake were sort of largely untroubled, were they? We should, Dan, talk about the goalkeeper, shouldn't we? Jim says, should Kepa retire from Carabao Cup finals? You have James Trafford, didn't have much to do, but made that brilliant triple save early on, and that changed the whole game that he makes those saves. And then you have Kepa, who basically throws one in.
Yeah, James Trafford slightly undoes my argument here, but I know it's the modern way and managers play second-string goalkeepers in cup ties, but in a final that you're so desperate to win, that your fan base is so desperate to win as well, something that can... An event that can have a knock-on effect for the rest of your season. I would suggest that David Raya is probably more integral to the way Arsenal actually play going forwards as well than Donnarumma is for Manchester City. So to change that and put in a goalkeeper, unfortunately for Kepa, he does have a rick in him. There's a massive drop-off, and I'm not saying there's not a drop-off between Donnarumma and Trafford because obviously there is. But I just think Raya's integral in different ways to Arsenal. I think it almost maybe gives Manchester City. And if you were to pick Arsenal's top three players, I think Raya would probably be in there. He's that important to them. Big games are often decided by mistakes, and you felt as the game went on, and Kepa had obviously had that incident where he got the yellow card. He was dallying on the ball. It felt taking too long. I think he took 40 seconds at one point to pass the ball. it did feel like it might come down to him. And in the end, Arsenal have lost that final, I think, because they've changed goalkeeper. I don't think he's got any business playing in a cup final. That's my personal opinion. I don't know much about man management. I'm not a football manager, so I'm sure managers all over the world would disagree with what I'm saying, and there's things to do with keeping the dressing room happy and whatnot. But if you're in a cup final that's so important, I keep saying so, I don't know what's wrong with me. If you're in a cup final that's that important, you have to play your number one goalkeeper.
Yeah, he's right, isn't he, John? I mean, it just, unless part of the contractual agreement, it won't be written down, but is you will play in these games. And you obviously want your reserve keeper to play some football so they don't just come in having never played like Kingsky last week for Tottenham. But it's mad. You're right. It seems mad.
It feels to me like the goalkeepers this season have come to the fore in a way. I mean, you look at Chelsea with the Jorgensen and Robert Sanchez thing, Kepa, obviously, and obviously the situation at Tottenham where they've been playing a goalkeeper with a hernia problem for as long as they possibly can, and it's not really worked out for him. Yeah, the thing is, at my beloved Bournemouth, Kepa had really quite a good season last season. He's not a bad goalkeeper. At one point, he was the world's most expensive goalkeeper. But yeah, there's a rick in there, and it's absolutely correct. The style of football that Arsenal like to play is actually very reliant on David Raya, as Manchester City used to be when Edison was there. He provides that outlet. And a player like that and a goalkeeper in a final needs to pull off big saves. You talk about finals being remembered for players. Often it is the goalkeeper. You go back to Dave Bezant or whatever, and it's that pulls off those important saves. As a Manchester United fan, like Les Seeley coming in for Jim Leighton. You've got this idea where if a goalkeeper flops at Wembley, you probably had it as a team, haven't you? And one thing you would say is City, as soon as they'd scored, went and scored straight away, didn't they? They didn't. They gave Arsenal no time to lick their wounds and come back into it. They were ruthless with it. And poor old Kepa. I mean, I think obviously there was the one where he refused to leave the pitch. I think he'd let in every penalty in a penalty shootout. I mean, it's
missed a penalty as well.
Missed a penalty, of course. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, perhaps Kepa should have gone to Arteta and said, "Listen, Gaffer, I think I should sit this one out." I'll accept that. Accept them. And I suppose the reason they do it is for some sort of esprit de corps within the team, isn't it? That the role of a number two goalkeeper is actually very important to the team, and you can't really have number one and number two and interchange goalies. We've known that over the years, and this is proof positive of that. David Raya, I think, will play in Arsenal's next game, and if they get to the FA Cup final, I'm prepared to bet he might start that game as well. Yeah,
we've managed to get 20 minutes in, Seb, without saying the word bottle with regards to Arsenal. and they are still hot favourites for the title. They have a favourable draw in the Champions League in as much as you can have in the quarterfinals of that. They've got a nice draw in the FA Cup as well, I think. So, but in terms of the title race, for the neutrals, this is the perfect result, right? Arsenal have 2 weeks, this international break, to stew on that. And, they've got the game at the Etihad now, which is fascinating to see how City play it, how Arsenal play it. And it is possible that they come second in everything.
If Arsenal don't win a cup competition, I think cup competitions are often won by sides. You need to be decisive at the front end of the pitch. And having watched Arsenal countless times this season, you're rarely convinced with them in an attacking sense. Their defensive organisation is second to none. They don't concede many goals, as we've seen. They are happy to defend. The wide players are happy to track back and defend. But I find they're at their best in attacking sense when teams have slightly come onto them and they're able to play through them. And Eze was a good signing for them in that respect. He's somebody who can create that, link things up, release a pass or shoot from distance, and that's probably why they bought him. If they don't get over the line, I don't think it's going to be a mentality thing. I just think they're going to have those situations, which in a weird way City have had in certain games, where you just can't find that way through against a side at home. because you look at the fixtures they have left, and that is going to decide it for them. It's not the Etihad game. It's going to be, can they beat Bournemouth? Can they beat Newcastle? Can they beat Fulham? Can they beat Burnley? See how I rattled off those home games off the top of my head? I hope they're right. And they're the ones that are going to decide it. So in that scenario, I think defensively you trust them, but do you trust them in attack? When it comes to the latter stages of the Champions League, are they going to come up against Barcelona, say, in the semi-finals, not to jump ahead, but we have to do that, or a Bayern Munich in the final, PSG in the final, who have the talent at the front end to take advantage? Think of the Manchester United game at the Emirates. The only game they've lost at the Emirates this season was won by some screamers, really, from Man United players and an error at the back, some errors at the back from Arsenal. That can happen in matches. It happened in the final. So the mentality thing is going to be thrown at them if they don't get over the line. But I just think it's going to be a summer where if they don't invest in elite talent in the front line, then they are always going to find themselves in this sort of situation until they win things. Arteta's pressure is going to come from up above, obviously, if he doesn't win things, simply because of the investment. But I do think he is a lesson in just give a manager time to create something within a club. And Arsenal supporters, something has been created over the last few years with Arteta, to the point you just have to remember where they were when Arteta came in.
Absolutely. Totally right. Worth mentioning the Cherky kick-ups and Ben White saying, no, thank you. Reminded me of, I think, Ronaldo doing loads of step-overs for Man United. Graham Stewart at Charlton, was it? Or Everton? I can't remember. Just going, sorry,
he
mate.
actually, I was going to say, Max, he actually did it in the 2006 League Cup final. And I think it was against Leighton Baines or someone like that. And I remember I was at the game. I remember Ryan Giggs running over to him and saying, don't do that. Like, don't, that's disrespectful for a fellow professional. Because Giggsy would know that if you do that, eventually you're going to get a wallop. So, yeah. And I think Ben White was more than happy to dish that out.
That was a really satisfying exchange, I think. I think if you're from a more City persuasion and you want Arsenal to lose, you're loving the fact that Cherky's doing the kick-ups and you think it's great to see and it's fun. And if you're on the other side and you don't like it, well, Ben White gave him a whack, got a yellow card, and everything was fine. I think I saw Ben White say, have a word with him, as in have a word with Cherky. Not in a Gary Lineker way, but just, have a word with your player before he does that again.
A producer, Tayo, who is an Arsenal fan, saying one of the worst places to be as a fan is on Wembley Way after a defeat with the stop-go signs and the horses. You just can't get to the tube. You want to be anywhere else. It's such a good observation. Worth saying, it's another City trophy. While these charges, the 115 charges, are we know nothing. We don't know what's going to happen. It is worth putting that on record. And Aidan says, was City's win at Wembley the best result Spurs have had in 2026? That will lead us nicely to part 2, which sadly begins at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Luke says, has a team ever had a parade before losing 3-0 at home before? Spurs 0, Forest 3. And Dan, the fans, they gathered in thousands with flares. They had a cup final atmosphere. They welcomed the team bus. And you sort of have to give Spurs fans credit. They did an unbelievable, considering what they've been served up all season. They were going to have a protest and they decided not to have it because this game was so important. It just gave me even more hope. And now those fans have got to do it again sometime because it didn't work. This is an absolute disaster.
You've got to give the Spurs coaching staff, manager and players credit as well for completely dissipating any good feeling within 45 minutes of a game kicking off as well. Because I saw all the statements coming from the fans in the week, and obviously things have been very, very fractured at Spurs. And I thought, fair play, because sometimes when things are going wrong at a football club, sometimes as fans you have to try and do something. And I think the Spurs fans tried to do that. And Spurs had obviously had a couple of decent performances as well. They got the 1-1 at Anfield, which not many people would have seen coming. And then I watched them on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever it was, they played in the Champions League and thought they played really, really well. And then suddenly they turn up on Sunday to play. And kind of a couple of the things that were really good about what you did, the managers just completely decided to rip that up. Like, Xavi Simons was Tottenham's best player. How can he then not play on Sunday? It beggars belief that you would take away, it's so Spurs, that you would take away something that was one of the best things about your team against a high-level side in Atleti in the Champions League, and then not do that same thing again. Van der Ven at left-back, Spurs are just all round, everything factored in. Spurs are just the strangest football club that's ever existed, Max.
I mean, well, Chelsea might want a word with you, but
they're up there as well.
I don't disagree. And Dan is so right, Seb. Tactically, it's mad. It's just, what do you, like, it was such a good, like, okay, the Atleti game, they actually could have got something. There were moments in the Atleti game where they were, they had a great chance. Tell had a chance, Parra had a chance. You think they could have actually won that tie. They didn't. But, like, take that approach and play a team that have won twice all year. I know that's infinitely more than Tottenham have won this year, but it is like, just do that.
Yeah, it's funny because people were saying this about Amorim just before he departed. Think something would go well and then he would change it. And people say, why are you doing that? And that, to me, is a sign of a manager in trouble, because to play a centre-back out of position, to play a midfielder out of position, that players, we spoke about the injuries, but some players were back for this one. That's what's interesting. They've been getting players back. So then you're looking and think, well, what can they do from this situation? Now, I think the draw against Liverpool was more about Liverpool, said a lot more about Liverpool than it did about Spurs. The Atletico tie was done. I think at Atletico, if it had been tighter, they might have turned up a bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe.
And I found yesterday, and I am going to diverge onto Forest, because I'm sure you are going to ask about them, but I think that also that was a really interesting marker, because I, at the start of the season, didn't think Forest would go down. As the season's gone on and the managerial changes have happened, I've been worried for them, and I genuinely thought last weekend that they needed to probably get a win over Fulham, but that's not easy. And you looked at the fixture, you thought this is going to be tricky. This could be the thing for them. This could be the moment where they keep themselves up. They're still in the Europa League, and Villa could still be the team that helps Spurs out again, as they did this weekend. But it was incredible yesterday to bounce back to Spurs, because you asked me about them, just in case people think we don't talk about Forest. Just to go back to Spurs, it feels as if everybody's feeding in this circle. So supporters tried after the game in midweek to give a boost, to give the feeling. The players give it everything at the start of the game. But I think we can apply this to so many teams. As the game goes on, those doubts creep back in again. And you can see once Forest took the lead, it was done. The game felt done.
Yeah,
supporters
Spurs were
were
actually
resigned.
okay in that game.
Yeah,
Spurs
they were fine.
good, and then it was such a soft goal to concede. And look, we obviously must send our condolences to Igor Tudor, and it is more important than football, to find out he'd lost his father and have to rush back, and we send our love to him. But and so it seems really sort of awful to say, but he needs to get sacked. But in footballing terms, John, they've got 2 weeks now, Tottenham, and surely they have to do whatever it is. I don't know what it is, I can't say Harry Redknapp again, because every time I mention it, Lars sends me a barrage of messages going, he's 79, and he just, the professional footballers are elite sports people. Stop being an idiot. But even still.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is difficult to talk about considering Igor Tudor's personal circumstances, which is just horrendous, isn't it? And unfortunately, Tottenham may have to make a decision that goes against sentiment, really, here. Though, again, we ask the question, where and who is making this decision? Because that is the issue that we've got at Tottenham, is that since the departure of Daniel Levy, that there is a level of disorganisation at the club, a complacency crept in. We just don't know who's making these decisions. I mean, people will come forward and say they are in the case of Johan Langer and stuff like that, but we just don't know how it's happened. And the fact that Igor Tudor is, we think, the appointment of someone, Fabio Paratici, who'd actually left the club. I mean, that speaks to the. That's just classic Tottenham, as Dan says. This club was running off almost that psychedelic patterns of behaviour, and it is crazy, that performance and the confidence within that team. You would have felt after beating Atletico Madrid there would be confidence, but it's so easily sapped, didn't it? And an Igor Jesus,
yeah.
And then I mean, I think it's Andy Reid on the Sky commentary talking about Morgan Gibbs-White's goal, and he's just saying, I don't know how he's been allowed that amount of space to score. And it's true. It's just like how, I mean, he's just there and it is so easy for him. And it being Tottenham, of course, who was the player they wanted last summer? Morgan Gibbs-White. And
there we are. Yeah, add that to the list with Eze as well.
Yeah, it just feeds into this total disaster that there is a really good story of the season to be written now. That, you know, at the end of every season, you know, the club reporters of clubs will do that. This happened. That the Spurs journalists are going to have to do a 10-parter because it's been, whatever happens, if they stay up, it's been absolutely amazing. And you know, we're all rubbernecking it, aren't we? I cannot not watch.
Well, I'm not. I'm in it. I'm in it, John. You're rubbernecking it. I'm there. I'm going to get the fire brigade to cut me free. It is worth saying what a brilliant result that is for Forest. I think the relegation. You know, now I'm looking at all their fixtures. You know, clearly they're not out of it. Forest. The run-ins are fascinating. That ball from Nico Williams was brilliant. Of course, that'll give them so much confidence. But you know, there's a long way to go. And West Ham are mercifully below Tottenham in the Premier League for how long? Well, at least 2 weeks or until West Ham next play. Because they went to Villa Park, Dan, and actually, like, this could have been 10. I mean, it was 2-0, but Villa were... Will you tell me how much this was Villa being brilliant and how much this was West Ham, who we thought had kind of turned a bit of a corner, were appalling?
First off, I feel incredibly guilty for kind of everyone that isn't a Spurs fan that Villa decided to sort themselves out against West Ham, because if West Ham had managed to beat Villa and Spurs dropped into the bottom three after that result yesterday, you know, it would have been absolutely box office, wouldn't it? And West Ham were bad, but in 2026 Villa have played lots of other teams that have been bad and not managed to get a result. Villa played really, really well in a weekend where other results have been very, very favourable to them as well. They're the only team that are kind of gunning for Champions League that have picked up 3 points. That feels like a huge, huge moment in the season for us. Feels like a big turning point. And kind of pre-game recently, when Emery's picked his team, there's always been something there that I've not liked and that I've wanted to unpack and unpick. He picked the team that I think most of the fans would have wanted at the weekend. He picked the players that have been in form. Did a bit of the opposite of Spurs in that the players that played well on Thursday, who maybe aren't regulars like Jadon Sancho, he kept them in. And just because it worked on Thursday, he went with it again. And I think Villa took a little bit of confidence from Thursday. I think there was the shoots of recovery against Lille, and they brought it into this game. And in the first 10, 15 minutes, I thought, right, we're on it here. And McGinn makes such a huge difference, not just to the crowd, but I think to those around him as well. That the players just seem like they've got a new lease of life with John McGinn in the team. He's the standard bearer for the football club. He's been there for so long, and actually he's a fabulous footballer as well. And Villa could have been 3-4 up at half time. West Ham probably, you would say that they've done something strange tactically in that Tadebo's gone down in the warm-up, and they've obviously planned the whole week to play a back three. Tadebo gets injured and they've ended up going to 4 at the back, and they looked like a team that hadn't worked on that formation in the week. And it was 2-0, but it honestly was a 2-0 trouncing. West Ham were never in that game.
Yeah. Watkins scored, Dan. I mean, there were enough. He still looks rusty, doesn't he? Are you surprised he's not made Thomas Tuchel's 80-man squad?
No, I don't think he can have any complaints. In all honesty, he's had a poor season. He's had the odd good game here and there, and yesterday was one of those games. I thought he played really well, but overall, I just don't think he can say that he's had the consistency or the performance level this season to justify being selected. You could probably look at it and say, like, maybe has he done more than Solanke this season? Arguably, but he just hasn't been there. Unfortunately for him, he set himself such high standards under Emery and scored so many goals, got so many assists. They haven't been there this season, and the performances haven't been there either. In previous kind of bad runs he's had, he's always still chipped in with assists. Like there'd been nothing in some of these games, but it was good to see him play. Yes, I think he deserved to play because he came on and played well on Thursday. Like I said about Emery doing the things of keeping the players in that did well on Thursday. But at the moment, I don't think he deserves to be in the England squad, and I don't, unless he suddenly hits another 5-6 goals towards the end of the season. I don't think he'll be in the World Cup squad.
I was going to say on Thursday I went to the Lille game, and I was chatting to a few Villa people before the game. They were saying how Tammy Abraham, a lot of the fans wanted him to play, and it was the right selection. But the difference when Ollie Watkins played compared to Tammy Abraham in that game, like his movement, he is a really and obviously the team ticks better with McGinn in the team. That's for sure. But Watkins played really well there, and I thought it's unfair that he's not in the squad, considering there's probably a few players that in that England squad that I would have doubts over, Solanke included. Another thing I want to say is Sancho. Emery is the master at reviving and turning over players that other people have given up on. And if he's getting a tune out of Sancho, then he really is a genius, because, so many, considering he's been at City, he's been at United, he's been at Chelsea, and they've all thought, this guy is so talented. Let's get the best out of him. And they haven't done it. And even to get the slithers of Sancho that we've seen at Villa, it feels like an achievement. I mean, it's so talented. Yeah, I think the other night, there was one point where he just ran the ball out because, I don't know why he ran the ball out, and then the next minute he's setting up a goal. That's just, an incredible player for many reasons.
The thing that surprised me, and the thing that Emery has got out of him, even though the productivity maybe hasn't been there, he doesn't half work hard. And I've not seen that at the previous clubs. He's been at, like, defensively, he's been very, very astute, Sancho, helping out his fullback. I think he's got another level or two that he can go, and obviously productivity is probably the next phase for him. But at the moment, on a free transfer, I'd quite like to sign him if he's going to be working under Emery.
Dan, I don't know how you feel about this, because I've sort of followed Sancho since he was playing for England under-17s. And from a talent point of view, he is right up there. But I've always felt physically he doesn't have the physicality to get away from players. He can beat a man, but then he can't accelerate away. He hasn't got that say, a power that maybe an elite winger would need to have to really make a difference at that end of the pitch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think sometimes there's a misconception about Sancho, about what type of player he actually is. He works incredibly well in tight spaces. I know Villa scored the goal the other night where he was kind of running onto the ball. It was a great pass from Emi Martinez, but actually, the way Villa play with the number 10s, you want to be giving him them ball in the tight spaces, because he can wriggle his way out of it. His passing's quite intricate. He works well in those kind of small spaces. And I just think he's been a really good player. I think Villa revived Rashford's career on loan last season from Manchester United. Emery does seem, like John says, does seem to have this knack of kind of rescuing people. And Villa I don't know whether it's a good thing for him or not if Villa qualify for the Champions League. I don't know what gives Sancho more chance maybe of staying at Villa. But he started speaking about Emery and the club with quite a lot of love recently. John McGinn's been really good with him apparently as well. It'd be interesting to see what happens to him in the summer and what Villa do with him, whether they've got a chance of getting him permanently.
Worth mentioning, Mavropanos making a number of goal line blocks. I think it was Luke, got in touch to say, is Mavropanos now more ball than head, with reference to, when Haaland left one on him. And look, West Ham's next game is at home to Wolves, and it is on the Friday night. So they're the first game of the weekend. And, that feels absolutely enormous for West Ham, because obviously if they win that, they would no longer be in the relegation zone. Leeds are still in trouble. They drew 0-0 with Brentford. Rob, can anyone possibly find anything interesting to say about Leeds, Brentford? Well, look, we just don't have a lot of time, and we should do... I mean, Brentford are like they could get into the Champions League, and we'll talk about them alongside Everton in part 3. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Vicar says, after this weekend's action, should you reintroduce the Everton Cup? And John, this is really interesting now, because we sort of looked at the 6 teams going for the top 5 places, but there now is a bit of a jump. We were just talking about Villa. They're on 54. Man United we'll get to are on 55. And then there's a little drop down. Liverpool on 49, Chelsea on 48, Brentford and Everton on 46. And I guess you can't discount, I don't know, Fulham on 44, Brighton and Sunderland on 43. Seems unlikely. But Everton beating Chelsea 3-0, they could get into the Champions League. And it's odd, John, because I haven't noticed them win any games this season. I don't know when they've done it by stealth.
And we spend so much time talking about Beto and Barry, don't we, as these, hapless strikers. And yet both of them, every time I'm on the pod, they seem to have scored. So someone's doing a good job, and I think it might be David Moyes. I think David Moyes is one of those coaches that is mischaracterised as sort of, last of the dinosaurs or whatever, but actually is a very progressive coach in his own way, and has been, if you think back to him back in his days at Preston, he was, the guy who was having lots of ideas, and obviously there's old school values there. but he knows how to set up a defence. He knows his way around midfielders. He will give creative midfielders their head if they're willing to work for him, and he's also quite good at getting a tune out of strikers that aren't actually very good, that the club can't really afford to buy and return. You think back to the days of Dennis Stracquilursi, and he managed to get a tune out of someone like that. I mean, David Moyes has had his failings in his career, but
sorry,
Everton,
John, you're going to have to remind me. I pride myself on knowing random footballers. On who? Dennis Stracquilursi?
I'm good at that stuff as well, and I don't remember him.
You've lost me.
He was an Argentinian that I think was signed in some element of desperation. We're talking about, in Moyes' first time in charge, and I think he managed to score like one goal or something like that. I'm going to have to look it up, aren't we?
Here we are. I've got him. Dennis Stracquilursi. Everton on loan, 20 games, 1 goal. Apart from that was his only... he played for many clubs, I presume all in South America, because I don't recognise any of them. But there we are. That's great, Nola. Thank you for introducing me to Dennis Stracquilursi.
I love that we don't have time to talk about Brentford, but we've got time to talk about Dennis Stracquilursi.
By the way, Max, I saw your eyes light up there, because I think you were thinking of Ian Colehouse, weren't you?
Well, I don't know what you... Yeah, absolutely. May that game rest in peace. But yes, carry on, John.
But yeah, I mean, as we found out, Dennis Stracquilursi scored 1 goal. And David Moyes has not been lucky with the strikers he's had to work with, and yet he's still doing this fine job. And I suppose one thing we should say about that, the Hill Dickinson is a young stadium, yeah. But I think that was the first night that we've heard it crackle as they wanted it to. Under lights, yeah, brilliant. David Moyes, a guy that just keeps coming back for more and keeps showing us that he is actually a really, really good manager, and he's at the right club, the club that he probably should never have left in the first place. Yeah, I mean, and the Beto finish, you commented on the game, Seb, the Beto finish the first one is brilliant, absolutely, it's brilliant. And then the Ndiaye goal, I mean, that is as in the top corner. You couldn't place it in the top corner if you walked up with the ball in your hands. What did you make of them? What did you make of Chelsea as well?
Well, on Everton, I think while I was covering the game, that was what kept crossing my mind. I'd covered their previous game against Arsenal. They played so well in that game. They should have scored a couple of goals even. But Arsenal obviously gave them enough resistance for them to not be able to get the result they needed. Chelsea gave them no resistance in this particular fixture. And Beto's finish reminded me of the Fernando Torres finish in the Euros final in 2008. I love finishes like that, because the moment he left his foot, you think maybe the spin of the ball might take it wide, but it never does. It always just nestles just exactly where you wanted it to go. And Ndiaye's finish was... you couldn't get it more into that top corner without it kissing the woodwork. I said it was in the postage stamp. I don't think stamps get that far into the corner. I just thought that was chef's kiss, an amazing angle to see it where it placed in the end. And everything went right for Everton in the game. I thought they were fantastic. And it sort of moves on nicely to the Chelsea situation in that David Moyes is at a club where, as John mentioned, results can pass by, and the vast majority of football fans who aren't, say, Everton supporters, this applies to Brentford, this applies to Fulham, they're not going to know if you've lost or won. It doesn't really affect the swings and roundabouts until they look at the league table and go, oh my God, Everton are down there or Everton are up here. If you manage Chelsea, you know every single result is people are going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and that's the reality of it. You have to go through that. And if that happens in more than one game in a row, then obviously the spotlight comes down on you and everybody's going to be honing in on everything you say, everything you do to try and get it right. And so many managers at clubs that are investing in competing for trophies have to go through this. Eddie Howe's in that situation, but he's coming out with the inverted commas excuse of why he can't get to that next level. And that certainly, when you're watching Chelsea, you're thinking, so many of these players cost so much money, but they were bought for money with the idea that they would hold that value, maybe even increase it in times gone by. They're not finished pieces. They're not players that are going to get you over the line in games like this, where you are away to a side who are tough to beat and you require experienced players in your team. Chelsea have no experienced players in their team at all. They've got players who've done well in recent years, but that leadership is not there, especially as Reece James is injured. And they felt rudderless on the pitch. Little moments here and there during the game where you could see players' talents, but they look a lost side. And you wonder, even if whatever manager they bring in, I think the whole structure of the club needs to change, of what direction they're going in, because the direction they're going in, they will not be competing for the major honours anytime soon.
The direction Liverpool are going is interesting, Dan, isn't it? A defeat at Brighton. We should talk about Danny Welbeck because he's not made the Tuchel squad. And it's perhaps unlucky, when we're talking about Calvert-Lewin making it and Ollie Watkins not making it. And I think he's scored more than any other Englishman in the Premier League this season. But on Liverpool, they weren't great in this. They weren't great in this game. And I think, I don't know, you just thought after that Galatasaray game, you're like, this is clicked now and they're on it. And they weren't.
I think they've had that moment quite a lot of times this season, Liverpool, where they've won a game and then they followed it up with an abject performance. And that 10 Premier League defeats for Liverpool now, that is, no one would have seen that coming at the start of the season. They were so astute with what they did last season, like winning games, and they never really looked in any trouble at all. This season, every time I've watched them, by and large, they've looked in trouble. And there's just so many basic issues there that you'd think Slot would have fixed by now to be in, the end of March, and the same kind of things are happening that were happening in September. He's not adjusted. The distances between the players in kind of every area always look off. In terms of the distance between the centre-backs and the full-backs, the distance between the defence and the midfield, I watch them and they just look like a mishmash of players. They've got a lack of intensity. They're quite passive, which are all the things Liverpool weren't under Klopp. And then when they go behind in games, he makes subs that nearly always make them worse and make them even more unorganised. Like, this has happened so many times this season, and it's felt like nobody really wants to take charge and take hold of the top four or the top five to get in the Champions League. Liverpool, I can't see them doing it if they continue making the same mistakes that they've made all season.
Yeah, we talked about that England squad, John. Liverpool, even if England won't or might, but Liverpool miss Alexander-Arnold, don't they? I mean, maybe you're always better when you're not there, right? And maybe he wouldn't have changed this season, but he just feels such an absence of that creativity.
Yeah, and I suppose that the thing to say about that is the planning to replace him. Conor Bradley was supposed to be the heir apparent, but unfortunately has suffered an injury. Frimpong, from the very first game, actually, from the Community Shield, did not. It was clearly a very different player to Trent. So they've lost the creativity and the players. And I think we talk about this almost every time. But Dominic Szoboszlai has to drop back to right back because your best player playing right back. Well, they had that before, maybe with Trent, but it's not working when Szoboszlai is going there or having to drop there. Because it's a waste of his excellence, and it's interesting. A player that I know both you and I are a fan of, Florian Wirtz, is now getting stick, isn't he, for not being effective enough? You're in that territory of floating like a butterfly, stinging like one. Is sort of the description I've seen. He's just not. It's just not happening for him. But again, he needs the players around him. And they were unlucky that Ekitike gets an injury early, but they just don't have the players now, despite all that money. And, this shows you, we've had a weekend of Eddie Howe, complaining about not being able to buy players. But Liverpool and Manchester United in the past have shown that you can spend as much money as you like, but if you don't spend it on the right players, then it doesn't work for you. And Arne Slot, to me, every time I hear him speak, he's defending his own record. That's not a good sign, is it?
Yeah. 4 wins in 5 for Brighton. I mean, and Hertzler was under real pressure until little run, Seb. And 2 for Danny Welbeck. I mean, we've had Danny Welbeck's good, that conversation, so many times. Are you surprised that he hasn't, because by all accounts, he's a really good clubman as well. He's good around the place, but he's also really talented. Are you surprised he's not made that squad?
I am, because of obviously the squad contains 1,000 players. So I would have thought he would have got into that mix. And he ticks all the boxes for that striker, that player that you want in the squad, knowing that Harry Kane's going to start every game if he's fit. Somebody who's going to just be... Danny Welbeck's the sort of person who just gets on with everybody. Every player that's with him, he's one of the most popular players. Older players love him. The younger players love him. And he's just had one of those careers where he's blossomed into this... In the way when he came through, people thought he's not the sort of player that would still be at his best at this age. But he's actually shown that if you look after your body, having gone through all the injuries he's been through, that you can still get that time at the back end of your career. Because in a weird way, if you are available for every game for season after season, you can get burnt out, I think. But if you have injuries here and there, you can... Maybe your body's not been through enough of that game time to think, actually, I can still go on now to play into my mid-30s, and he's showing that. I am surprised he's not in the squad. It could be a timing thing because he didn't score the goals just before the squad was announced. That might have helped. But he certainly seems like, considering the other strikers brought into the squad, I think he could have certainly been considered.
We'll round off the top 5 chat with Man United in just a second, but I wanted to talk about Newcastle Sunderland, Dan, because it was more recent. I can't really remember the Manchester United game. It was so long ago. But Newcastle fans sometimes feel we have an agenda against the club. And look, no Wilson, no Barry on this pod. So that is something at least. But it is impossible to understate how big a result this is for Sunderland. And doing the double over Newcastle in their first season back in the Premier League. And they have such a good record against them. But that is absolutely enormous.
Yeah, and look, Sunderland it's felt like they've tailed off. Like they've almost done that thing where they've got to safety and then kind of took the kind of foot off the gas a little bit. But they could have gone under yesterday against Newcastle. Bearing in mind they're not completely free-flowing at the moment. Going 1-0 down, made a mistake for the goal, which is one of the most bizarre goal kick formations I've ever seen in my life. The way he ran onto the ball, I don't think we'll ever see that again. I'm not sure that's going to catch on at all. Sunderland could have gone under, but they didn't. Somehow, after that first half, it was Newcastle that ended up going under, and they've obviously had that basketball match with Barcelona in the week. I'm sure there is an element of fatigue there, but they can't be losing that game. And then Eddie Howe's comments after the game, I've got some sympathy with them around PSR, which probably won't be a popular opinion with listeners. But Newcastle's season has just been bizarre the whole way. And there's lots of teams that have had bizarre seasons, as we've spoken about earlier. But I'm not sure when you've had the kind of outlay that they've had in the summer and you've probably made your team worse, that you can come up and peddle the PSR excuse. I think Newcastle have coasted by this season on the fact that they're struggling in the league, but they were still in the Champions League. They're not in the Champions League anymore, and their league position is pitiful.
Yeah, I mean, it was a basketball game, but very much the fourth quarter was just a sort of Harlem Globetrotters basketball game worth saying. Brian Brobby said, very similar physique to me was my first observation, but what a brilliant, one of many, but like a brilliant signing for Sunderland.
Yeah, people forget how old he is. He's only 24, and that Sunderland side had a lot of youth in it. You know, Talby's 20, Chris Rigg starting in that game, local boy who just, I thought, put in a fantastic performance, particularly in the second half. Diarra, Siddiqui, these are all very, very young players. Even the goalkeeper, Elborg's only 22. But they had the energy, they had the legs on Newcastle by the back end of the game. And a figure like Brobby is certainly somebody, even when he was, you know, he's been in Netherlands squads, they clearly see somebody who can be that different focal point for somebody up front. He is somebody who, we were talking about Beto earlier, Brobby can pin defenders. He can make it really difficult for them. But he's also shown when he gets a chance, he can take it. He's a penalty box presence. And he scored some big goals this season, but this was the biggest. I mean, you could see him at the end. He was praying. He was hoping, can we just win this? Because he knows down the line, in years to come, there was a cutaway of Ryan Taylor in the crowd, okay? And this is a guy who scored a free kick in this fixture, and it's still talked about by supporters. So from the Sunderland point of view, they'll still be talking about this because they're on I think, 11-game unbeaten run against Newcastle now, which is just astonishing when you think about it. And their season, when we look through the league and we see so many people saying this is a poor league season, the quality's not great, the Premier League's dropped. But the Premier League has been so competitive, it feels very condensed. It feels like any team can get a result from any team. And for Sunderland to be in that scenario and find themselves where they are, they will be one of those sets of fans that, in the happiness chart, is there an argument to say they're top?
I'm possibly, yeah. Talby, the youngest player to score for Sunderland against Newcastle in the Premier League. The pressure is on Eddie Howe, John. Like, the fans booed. And, there's a lot of online pressure, but they're in the stadium, they've been behind Eddie Howe. I mean, it would still be a massive risk to replace him, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that he's earned the right to give it another go, you would say. I mean, there is this idea that Eddie Howe lacks support from those above him in the club last summer when all the Alexander Isak saga was going on. I think the signing of Volta-Mada, as much as we may enjoy him, is now seen as a mistake. A mistake, actually, that, of course, Eddie Howe and his nephew, wasn't it, that was involved in the recruitment team, will have to take some of the blame for.
It always sounds like his nephew would be about 6. When he just,
in his 30s. Yeah. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
His nephew is just,
he's tall. He's really tall. Let's buy him. That's sort of what a 6-year-old might do,
experience, right? Yeah, but but it's and that's what I've been hearing from some of the. I was at the Newcastle game at Chelsea the week, just chatting to some of the local lads about that. And listen, Eddie Howe has a good relationship with the local press. That I think that counts for quite a lot, and. The thing is, Howe's built something there. It's just that he perhaps hasn't had, and he can blame BSR if he likes, but he hasn't had the support to take it to the next stage. I think that's fair to say. But yeah, should it start going wrong next season, then yes, he could have a problem. Yeah, Newcastle, I mean, when Anthony Gordon scores that goal, you're thinking, right, okay, this is it. And then the second half, a bit like the Spurs thing, a bit like Arsenal, they just don't show for the second half, and Sunderland deserve that. And, Mr. Brobby is, I've really enjoyed watching him. I saw him play for Ajax a few years ago, and he was absolutely hopeless. And now I'm watching this guy thinking, wow, he's great. So there you go. What do I know?
Important to say the derby was overshadowed by the reports that Lucha Gatrado had been the subject of racist abuse from home fans. The ref, Anthony Taylor, stopped the match in line with the league's on-field anti-discrimination protocol. It was early in the second half. Premier League Match Centre said the incident at St James's Park will now be fully investigated. We offer our full support to the player and both clubs. Racism has no place in our game. Newcastle said, we're aware of a report of racism made by a visiting player against someone in the crowd during our Premier League match against Sunderland. Our stance is clear. We do not tolerate discrimination of any form. We'll work with the authorities to fully investigate and will ensure any individuals are identified and held accountable. So Bournemouth 2, Man United 2. Quickly, John, you were there. Did you have a nice time? Really fun game this, wasn't it?
It was a really exciting game, yeah. A little difficult for those of us that have to work to a 10 o'clock deadline, thanks to 10 minutes of added time, where I don't know where those came from. But, and obviously a lot of VAR chat. Now, my view is that the referees probably got this right, which is an unpopular view among Manchester United. I didn't think there was enough in the Ahmad foul. I mean, you could see why, and you could see why VAR would not interfere with it. United got themselves in a good position and let it slip because Bournemouth is so difficult to play against when they're on it. And I was writing for the 10 things, the talking points. Mainu versus Alex Scott, another one when we go back to the 80-man England squad. Why Alex Scott wasn't in the squad? He's been done as best player this season.
Really like him.
He's brilliant to watch. He glides like, the socks rolled down or whatever gives it a sort of, slightly 70s, 80s feel, which I suppose we all buzz off. But him against Mainu, Scott had the better game, I had to say. He is an excellent player. I know Seb's seen quite a lot of him as well. Wow, yeah. And I don't really see how that's that's come about. But Thomas Tuchel was at Wembley yesterday, and I think had to sit with a load of journalists fielding questions from him about that. But again, that game, it turns out it wasn't that bad a result for Man United, but it did show that the weakness within the squad that they've got. Casemiro got booked quite early and then couldn't put himself about as he quite liked, and then they lost control of midfield. But one more thing, actually, I should say. Cunha, this guy is been red hot for United recently. I had my doubts about that signing, but he's looked really, really good.
Thank you, John. Fulham beat Burnley 3-1 in, I would suggest, is the first really pointless game of the season. You think Burnley might have had a chance to survive? My apologies. Fulham were bound to be in that game, weren't they? I mean, you could have looked at the start of the season and gone, maybe this will be the first one. But, Burnley, I guess, if they do stage a great comeback, and I have traduced them to pointless at this point, I will forever apologise. But we spent too much time talking about the League Cup final. So that's entirely my fault. It's all on me, this.
Can we not say about Raul Jimenez?
Oh, well, his penalty record.
And his father passing away in a penalty.
No, carry on. Please do. That's important.
Well, I'll just give 1 point on the Fulham game. Obviously, Raul Jimenez, his father passed away, really emotional at the full-time whistle. But his penalty record is exceptional, the best there's been in the Premier League, 14
in 14, yeah.
Question marks about his run-up, but I think it's just about okay, isn't it?
I just don't know what the rules are on the run-up.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Nobody knows. And I don't think it's defined enough in that particular circumstance. I think if you stop just before you strike the ball,
right, then
that's a problem. But he stopped several times in the run-up. I mean, we've seen players do it in the past, Pogba, but he didn't stop just before striking it. Maybe that's how he got away with it. But maybe we're talking about something we know nothing about.
Well, it wouldn't be the first
podcast,
time.
Is it?
Yes, absolutely. But of course, we send him our love and our condolences. Finally, Ross got in touch to say, "Dear Max, Barry, and the other illustrious members of Football Weekly, I write listening to this latest episode as I sit here in 2 pairs of boxer shorts, excess padding, and feeling rather sorry for myself. More importantly, it's come to my attention by my good friend Phil that I completely forgot to listen to the podcast as I had my vasectomy this morning. As a long-standing listener of the pod, I feel I've let you down. I've let Barry down. Indeed, I've let the recently singed tubes in my balls down. A dull ache of regards, Ross." Thank you, Ross. We accept your apologies. Go and get it done again and listen to us.
I'm about to have one, and that's not filled me with confidence.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, good luck. Are you going to listen to the pod?
Can you do the pod while
I'll listen to it.
Having it done? That would be good, wouldn't it? I mean, that
someone did suggest that we were suggesting that I film myself having it done, and it's the halftime show of a live show, and that feels. I'm really dedicated to this podcast, but that does feel like taking it to quite the extreme.
Do you have to pay for it, or is it on the NHS or
NHS?
Is it?
Yeah,
I don't know. I thought you were going to say.
I'm looking forward to it.
I thought you were suggesting, Seb, for the first time ever, I dropped the "Do you know who I am" to try and get myself a free vasectomy.
Promotion.
I'm not
Instagram promotion.
I'm not after a Hummer. I just want a vasectomy. Anyway, that'll do for today. Thank you, everybody.